Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew from Elevated Planet, and today I am having a conversation with Fay Vale. Fay is a galactic artist, and you'll see her book here. I bought her book. It's wonderful. It's amazing. The images are fantastic, and I'll share a little bit more of that with you shortly. But first and foremost, hi there, Fay. How are you doing?
Hi there, John. Pleased to meet you and be on the interview. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you very much for being here because, you know, I love what you do. Now, do you think that you have ET roots yourself in terms of past lives and things? Do you think, because I've heard that a lot where people have these things, you know, things like you've experienced tend to find that there are galactic roots there that have created this in the first place.
Yeah, well, I've always been attracted to the moon for some reason. It's always fascinated me from being a child, but that's a lot of people. But when I was with my family when I was young, I never felt like I belonged. I always felt like I was adopted, the odd one out, which I still feel.
Right.
If I think back to maybe where I came from, I never think that I came from a planet. I always think I came from a starship, and that was where I lived. And it was like, you know, like when you watch Star Wars or whatever, and you got these massive ships like cities. I've always felt that's where I was.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult when you're on Earth because you never feel like you can find home.
No, I've heard that a lot from people who struggle to associate with the density of the planet, because life, and again, this is one of the things I understand, that life on planet Earth is actually one of the most challenging places to come for a life experience. And we come here for a life experience. We set out in advance what we want that to be, but also at this time, because we are, whether it's shifting dimensions, third dimension to the fifth dimension, or whatever it is supposed to be that's happening, that's evolving us to the next level, which I believe is happening over these next few years, decades, whatever. Yeah. But there are a lot more extraplanetary hybrid types or star seeds here on the planet because they're not stuck in the density. You know, if for those of us who've been in past lives for thousands of years and we're struggling our way through getting out of karma, there's been a lot more beings introduced, as, you know, into human entities to help with this, because they are not bogged down in karma, because they're not caught up in the programming of life to the same degree. But honestly, I've also heard that it's a big struggle for those people, because a lot of them just want to end it or want to commit suicide because they can't associate with the density that is on this planet.
Yeah, that's correct. There's so many pressures on people today. And being a light worker, it's a big pressure at the moment because we're trying to open people up and get them to see the bigger picture. You're working hard. We all work hard to try and help this to evolve and to begin to grow into what it should be. So we're like sort of mercenaries in a funny way. And it's just as difficult for the light workers because it's so hard to get your side of it over, because most people are so programmed. And unfortunately on the earth, there's a lot of greed and power. And greed and power can do a lot of things. So you've got them added difficulties. But because we're so open and allow consciousness to come in, we can keep going, because it's like, say you was trying to learn a script, you have to go it over and over and over it again before you can speak it without reading it. And it's the same thing, and this is what we're doing. We're just going over and over and over it again. And as soon as there's even one person who can say it out loud without reading the script, we've worked our magic.
Yes, yeah. You know, I like to think of us as maybe as benevolent mercenaries then. That's kind of like a way of looking at it as light workers. But One of the things that I feel that I'm on this journey because I represent the mainstream to a large extent, because I spent 58 years as very much in the mainstream, stuck in that world of corporate type of stuff, of the working long hours, of doing all that kind of thing and not realizing any of this stuff. The last 4.5 years has been a vast learning experience for me, and it's fantastic and I love it. It's totally opened me up. But I can still go back to when I was like 57 years old and realize I knew none of this stuff. And so I can kind of go back and say, well, I respect people's view for them to think this is deluded nonsense, because that was me not that long ago. Now my mindset is kind of completely different, and I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about everything we have ahead of us, and I am excited about this journey of continuing to take the message out there. But I'll never be preaching. I think that all you can do is share your truth, and for people then to pick out of it what works for them and to ignore what doesn't, because everybody has a time when they're supposed to come online. Or maybe they'll never come online because they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But it's not something you can force. But for our part, we can just keep putting the information out there and actually make it the joyous celebration of life that it's supposed to be. To me, that is a key, because life is not supposed to be full of fear and stress and anger and judgment and violence. None of that. This is supposed to be about living, from the heart, living in joy, plenty of laughter, plenty of fun, plenty of karaoke, whatever it takes. But it's about celebrating life, because we're here. We might as well enjoy it. And the more we share in this community consciousness of these highly high frequency, what I'm trying to say, the more we share that, the more it kind of multiplies outwards. After a while, people realize they have a choice. Yes, you can be stuck in fear, stress, jealousy, anger, judgment, or you could do this instead. You have a choice.
I think now, going back to saying like that you worked all them years in a corporate job, we've all done that. And of course, we've got to do that part of it, because how are we going to understand the earth if we've not experienced that? So whether it comes later on in life or you're a starseed and you're born straight into it, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's just that some of us have different learning to explore than others. And then when the time's right, the rainbow suddenly appears.
Yes. It's quite amazing. It is quite amazing. So you've been on a spaceship and you remember aspects of that. Did it feel good? Did it, when this came back to you through the hypnotherapy session, how did it feel to you at that point? Was it like light bulb moment?
It was quite confusing. It can be a bit confusing, because you always think something that dramatic that you wouldn't forget it. It'd be the first thing, when you have a dream that seems really real, you wake up and you can remember it like that. So it's quite confusing, because you think, my first UFO experience, I saw the craft and I watched it for a good 5 minutes. Closed the door, went to bed, and never thought about it the next day. But you would think something that important, you would have woke up next morning and you'd been saying, oh, something really strange in the sky. Nothing. So like you were saying, it's like a veil comes over and covers it up. So when you have a regression and then you suddenly realize, hey, I was on a craft, it's quite confusing that the two don't link automatically. So but then the more you know about it, the more you remember.
Right. And I think you get to remember when the time is right, because it's almost like a defensive mechanism, like your higher self or whatever allows you to remember things. It's kind of like you talk about Mary Rodwell, who you know, I mean, she's hugely well known in this line of work, right? In terms of the hypnotherapy and everything else. I mean, she is one of the topmost in the world, I would say.
Yeah,
And
no, you're right.
forward on your book as well, which is nice. But the coincidence of her having the student come to Glastonbury to put you under the, you know, to give you that first ever progression, to my mind, that wasn't a coincidence. That was a synchronicity that was supposed to happen that enabled you to remember because the time was right to remember.
No, you're correct. You're correct. I think that too. But then when I look at it, when you're under regression, you're not actually aware of your body. So like straight away, we're taken out of the stress of pain. And I know a lot of people who have had stuff done to them on spaceships remember the pain and that.
Mm.
I mean, I've had several things happen to me and woke up with different marks and bruises and strange things on my body.
Mm.
But I've never remembered how they occurred. I can get up in the morning and I've got a mark and I think, how did I get that? And I know I've only been to sleep, but now I know that after a couple of days it will disappear. But the way I accept it, okay, a lot of people say, but they've not got permission to mess with our bodies. Okay, maybe they're not, but subconsciously, maybe I've said they have.
Right.
Because when I look at it, as humans, we examine and we look at species to learn how they live and what they do. And I think it's the same thing because through my writings, have lots of ETs don't understand emotion because they don't actually have emotion. And so we're sort of an experiment to some species, but in a good way. And they would hurt us and we would feel pain because they don't know what pain is.
Yes.
It sounds crazy, I know, but and I had writing ones to ask me about fear because they said they couldn't understand fear. So I corresponded back and said, well, we have different types of fear. There's fear if you're going to lose your life, say somebody's got a gun at your head. There's fear maybe if you're going for an important interview. And then there's other fears about several things. So, and there's actually a fear that we put on ourselves when we go on fairground rides.
Right.
You know, So there's so many different fears, and this is why we are taken, and sometimes things are done to us because they're trying to understand. The more they understand how we work, they can work with us. So like they said, if they could conquer fear, their communication would be just like that.
Yes.
So there's lots of aspects to. I mean, nobody likes pain, but then if the pain is moving forward to being more of a union, more of one, then hey ho, some of us have to do it.
Yes. Well, as far as I'm aware, it's never happened to me. I've never woken up with any strange marks and bruises and stuff. So I think that's an experience that still awaits me at this point. But to your point, though, again, a lot of the stuff I've read over the last couple of years in particular, it turns out that the point you made about you don't, you know, like other people saying, well, they haven't got the permission to take my body to kind of do tests on. But from what I understand, that once you tap into the higher self says, oh yeah, no, we gave permission before she was born.
Exactly.
Because they know, they understand that we are not the physical body.
That's right. I mean, it's only like looking at a car you're going to buy and make sure the engine's running, this, that, and the other. It's the same thing, and they're just curious, the same as we're curious. I do believe that they found bodies in Roswell and they've had ETs loads of times.
Yeah.
What they've done, they've experimented on them, they've looked at them, they've found everything. It's the same thing. Yes. What they don't understand is they're on about, oh, there's all these UFOs, is that a threat to security, is that and the other? But that's regardless of how much stuff we're sending out up there. It's crazy.
Well, the thing is that I suppose because the human race is so steeped in emotion, it also makes us very dangerous relative to most species, because
there's always some idiot.
We have aggression, we have fear, therefore we have the need to defend ourselves, and we defend ourselves by attacking people and by attacking others. And therefore, one of the things that I know that, or I believe, certainly in terms of the extraterrestrials and other life forms, is that they have to be careful about how you approach mankind, because there's a defensive reaction, and there's also political types that are out there.
That's right.
Around for a long time, who want to create the fear agenda because it maintains control. And if they need to create fear around the alien types of existences, then that's a great way to do it, because we don't understand it. We don't know what they look like. They look very different. They, so there's plenty of reasons to have fear around that. And that's one of the risks, I suppose, to a degree, is that the governmental forces we call it a false flag event, make out we're being potentially attacked by alien beings, and therefore we need to get our retaliation in first. And it's crazy stuff, but we know that there's been so much suppression of information at that high level. You've experienced things directly yourself. Millions of people around the planet have experienced something similar. But one of the chief weapons that there's been over the last certainly few decades has been ridicule, right? Because promoting ridicule every time when somebody has an experience, and then the word goes out, now they're absolutely factually correct in everything they've experienced, but what they get back in return is ridicule, which is prompted, whether it's through the authorities or whatever, it's encouraged through the media to ridicule this stuff, because that is a defense mechanism. Because at the end of the day, the person then just shuts up and says, okay, well, I've made myself look like an idiot. I know that what I saw and what I experienced was true, but I can't talk about it. And therefore, it's a way of shutting people up.
That's right.
But I think we're going to move beyond this now. I think the time has come for us to take these steps forward. People may live in that alternative reality for a while of the conditioning and the programming, and that's fine. But I think opening this up as we are is the right thing to do, and it's why we're here. So, Fay, can I just bring you to the Galactic art? I've experienced the stuff you've done. How did that start to manifest itself through you? Oh, and can you explain to the community what it is?
All right, it's channeled art, but it's messages from ETs and other planets, but it comes in the form of art. I always believed that the Egyptians were an ET race, and they left all their history in art because art's a universal language. So because of that difference, they were very clever and decided to give images, which everybody, no matter where you live on the planet, you can look at that image and it can speak to you. So that's very clever. But when my art first came, I did it left-handed, and I'm a right-handed person. And most people who have a dominant hand can't control the other one at all. You can try and do stuff, but it's never the same as with your dominant hand. So when it first came, it was like a 2-year-old scribble. And it was only after doing it for about 6 weeks that images began to appear. But that was done really cleverly, because the ETs, if I'd have been drawing in my dominant hand and I would have done a line, and my brain would kick in and say, oh, that shouldn't be there, so I'd want to rub it out or scrub it off. Doing it the left side is a clear channel. Because you have no control of that hand, well, some people do, but not many. It can be controlled, because my brain doesn't come in and say, oh, that's wrong. So it's a clear channel. So that happened over about 6 weeks before they got the image through.